new set has arrived and class is in session. The latest expansion, Scholomance Academy, is now live, and with it, the meta has faced some drastic changes. Many players were extremely eager for the latest expansion to release, and others just wanted to be freed from Tempo Warrior and the grip it had on the meta. While it's very early in the Scholomance meta, one thing is for certain, there are a lot of very powerful cards and decks. In fact, many players have been calling for nerfs to a particular class or two already. In our opinion, it's a bit too early to tell, but it's definitely true that losing to these decks can be agitating. Only time will tell what Blizzard will plan on doing in terms of balance patches, but for now, this is the meta we're playing in. Things change daily, but for the time being, this meta snapshot will help you gain an edge on the competitive ladder. Before we take a deeper look into the top decks so far, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel over here at Tempo Strategy to be kept up to date with all of our strategy game content. While you're at it, please turn on notifications to be informed of all of our latest updates. Our Wild Meta Snapshot will likely be released sometime next week, so if you're interested, be sure to keep your eyes peeled. Now let's jump into Tier 1. Leading off Tier 1 is a deck you've probably encountered quite a bit if you played Standard. In fact, it's currently the only deck that our experts over here at Tempo Storm have deemed powerful enough to find itself in Tier 1. Animal Druid is a deck that makes use of all of Druid's powerful cards to do some insanely broken things. Not only can Animal Druid have insane swing turns with Kael'thas Sunstrider, but it can also just cheat out a large amount of mana thanks to Lightning Bloom. This deck has no shortage of wild swing turns, and given the right draws will win any game. That's not to say the deck is unbeatable, but it definitely ran rampant on day one, but has fizzled down slightly with every passing day. Animal Druid has a fantastic matchup against, well, most of the meta, but particularly against Tempo Warrior, as the swing turns are too fast and impactful for the warrior to accurately react to. Bad matchups exist, but they are a bit less prevalent than you'd hope for. The worst matchup for Animal Druid is against OTK Mage, with this matchup genuinely feeling unwinnable for the Druid if the Mage plays well. OTK Mage is one of the most difficult decks to pilot properly in the current meta, but when played well, Druids are but a fear of the past. As we mentioned before, Tier 1 is extremely short in this meta snapshot due to Druid's dominance on the ladder. Due to how short Tier 1 is, this time we'll be taking a look at the top 4 decks within Tier 2. Tier 2 decks are very solid ladder choices, but they are not Druid and thus can't find themselves within Tier 1. Let's take a look at the first deck within this tier. The other deck players have been calling to be nerfed is Galakrond Priest. While this archetype currently isn't as oppressive as Druid, it can be really unfun to play against at times. On top of this, the new legendary Mindrender Elusia will often render combo decks unplayable by taking your hand and dumping your combo, leading to some uninteractive board states. Only time will tell if Galakrond Priest will continue to do well, or if it's simply shining currently due to how easy it was to refine a list. Galakrond Priest is one of the rare decks that beats Druid, but its best matchup is against OTK Mage. Galakrond Priest has a lot of solid matchups across the board, but has less insane swing potential than Druid, making it a bit worse in general for ladder. When it comes to bad matchups, Galakrond Priest tends to struggle when facing off against Tempo Mage, as it can be difficult to deal with their combination of threats, randomly generated spells, and consistent threats like Solarian Prime. Next up within Tier 2 is a new variation of aggro Rogue with Weapon Rogue. This archetype plays out like the majority of aggressive rogue decks and aims to close out the game as fast as possible. The key cards that this archetype is abusing currently are the new Self-Sharpening Sword, as well as Secret Passage to cycle more aggressively. There are other new cards that help this deck out as well, but these two have proven to make a huge wave for the archetype. This rogue deck can and will get there ASAP, and will be painful to play against sometimes. Worry not though, if this deck ever takes off, expect our favorite tech cards to make their way back into the meta. Weapon Rogue has a favorable matchup against both mage archetypes that find themselves in Tier 2, but tends to have a bit of a rough time against Galakrond and Highlander Priest. The removal and healing turns coupled with the occasional weapon removal really leaves the rogue with a sour taste in their mouth. The next deck we'll be looking at is another Priest archetype with Highlander Priest. This list is inherently a bit less consistent than Galakrond Priest, but has access to the Highlander payoff cards such as Zephyrus the Great, giving the archetype an additional win condition. Highlander Priest continues to make use of the powerful cards that Priest has to offer, alongside the Galakrond package to generate nearly endless value. Highlander Priest is arguably more fun to play than Galakrond Priest, but realistically it's worse in the majority of matchups than Galakrond is due to being forced to run only one-offs. Much like Galakrond Priest, the best matchup for this deck is against OTK Mage. It's important to note though that you do better against Weapon Rogue, so if you're running into Valeera a lot, consider switching to this Priest build. You have the same unfavorables as the other variant of Anduin, but have a bit rougher of a time against Tempo Mage, as they will punish the inconsistencies of your deck. The last deck that we'll be looking at in Tier 2 today is Tempo Warrior. This archetype was on top of the previous meta for a very long time, but has finally fallen out of Tier 1. It seems all it took was a new expansion, riddled with overpowered cards. Tempo Warrior did receive some powerful new tools with both Lord Barov and Shield of Honor, but these tools have not given Garish a consistent way to compete against Druid. Tempo Warrior has a solid matchup spread, with it finding itself in a favorable position against both Weapon Rogue and Tempo Mage, but as expected, falls short when queuing into either Animal Druid or Galakron Priest. Sadly, the meta isn't shaped up perfectly for Tempo Warrior, but if either Druid or Priest are knocked down a peg in terms of power level, expect Tempo Warrior to prey on the rest of the metagame. As is tradition over here at Tempo Storm, we wanted to provide you with a deck that you can use to counter the meta. Generally, countering the meta entails targeting the top deck in the format, and lucky for you, we have just the deck. The deck we're suggesting today is Pure Paladin. This archetype has been seeing a decent amount of success on ladder, but tends to fall flat at the higher tiers. Decks like this tend to be a bit more difficult to play around, leaving them to struggle at the top legend rankings, but aside from that, there's solid choices for ladder. Pure Paladin is a deck that makes use of the Mono Paladin synergies, alongside Librams and the new cards that Paladin received with Scholomance Academy. This archetype generally abuses Druid and can take advantage of their slow first turns by applying a massive amount of pressure. We strongly suggest picking up Pure Paladin if you're looking to take advantage of the zoo that Malfurion has released upon us. Please do your part and help clear the ladder of the animals running wild. The standard meta truly has shaken up and will continue to change almost daily. It's impossible to tell if the meta will self-correct or if Blizzard will need to intervene, but one thing is certain, and that's that the new expansion has had a positive impact on the meta. Thank you for watching our Meta Snapshot breakdown. If you enjoyed it, be sure to let us know in the comments below so that we can continue to bring you this type of content. As always, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel to be kept up to date with all of our Hearthstone content. We'll see you next time.